I was sitting in a cafe in Helsinki last winter, watching university students prepare for their exams. Something struck me immediately. Nobody looked stressed. No frantic highlighting. No towers of energy drinks. No students hunched over laptops at 2 a.m. with bloodshot eyes. Instead, I witnessed something that challenged everything I thought I knew about effective learning. A Finnish student next to me was reviewing organic chemistry while sketching botanical diagrams. Another was discussing physics concepts with friends over coffee, their conversation flowing between complex theories and weekend plans. When I asked about their approach, one student said something that stuck with me. "We don't fight our brains. We work with them." This observation led me down a fascinating rabbit hole of Nordic learning culture, where neuroscience meets ancient wisdom in ways that might surprise you. Nordic countries consistently produce some of the world's most capable students while maintaining the highest levels of well-being. Finland's education system is legendary, but what happens outside the classroom tells an even more interesting story. These cultures have developed learning approaches that align with how our brains actually function, rather than how we think they should function. The difference isn't genetic or cultural superiority. It's a fundamentally different understanding of human cognition. The outdoor classroom revolution. Nordic. Students do something that might seem counterproductive to anyone raised on traditional study habits. They take their learning outside. This isn't just about getting fresh air. It's about understanding how environment shapes cognition at a neurological level. When you study in natural settings, your brain enters what researchers call soft fascination. Unlike the demanding attention required by screens or artificial environments, nature allows your mind to process information while simultaneously restoring cognitive resources. It's like running background software that optimizes your mental performance. I watched Swedish graduate students reviewing for comprehensive exams while walking through forests, their notebooks tucked in jacket pockets for periodic reference. They weren't distracted. They were strategically engaging their brain's natural processing systems. The neuroscience behind this is remarkable. Natural environments activate your default mode network, the brain state responsible for making connections between disparate pieces of information. Those aha moments that seem to come from nowhere? They're actually the result of your brain working in the background, connecting dots you didn't even know existed. Nordic educators understand that your environment isn't just where you learn. It's part of how you learn. A Finnish neuroscience student told me she reviews molecular pathways while observing actual biological systems in nature. Seeing photosynthesis happen in real time while studying the chemical equations creates connections my brain can't make sitting at a desk, she explained. Even simple changes matter. Students who study near windows with natural light show improved retention compared to those under fluorescent lighting. Adding plants to study spaces, taking breaks outdoors, or even viewing nature images can shift your brain into more receptive learning states. Your brain evolved in natural environments for millions of years. Nordic culture honors this biological reality instead of fighting against it. The rhythm of sustainable learning. There's a Swedish concept called lagom that means just the right amount. Not too little, not too much. Nordic students apply this principle to learning in ways that completely reframe how we think about academic effort. While other cultures glorify all-nighters and cramming sessions, Nordic learners have discovered something counterintuitive. Moderate. Consistent effort dramatically outperforms intense bursts followed by crashes. This isn't about working less, it's about working in harmony with your cognitive architecture. Your brain processes information like a muscle processes exercise. Push too hard and you get diminishing returns. Work within your optimal range, and you build capacity over time. I observed Danish students following what they call natural learning rhythms. Roughly 40 minutes of focused engagement followed by 20 minutes of restorative activity. But their breaks weren't passive. They might organize notes, discuss concepts with friends, or practice what Danes call hygge reflection, gentle contemplation of what they'd just learned. This approach leverages something called systems consolidation, where your brain transfers information from temporary to permanent storage during rest periods. Learning doesn't just happen during active study. It happens when you give your mind space to process. Norwegian students often describe their approach as flowing with natural energy cycles, rather than forcing artificial intensity. They study when their minds are naturally alert, rest when they need restoration, and trust the process rather than fighting it. The result? Sustainable academic performance without the burnout that plagues students in more competitive cultures. Learning. Without ego Nordic cultures practice, something that transforms the entire learning experience. They remove ego from knowledge acquisition. This stems from a social principle called janteloven, which emphasizes collective well-being over individual status. In learning contexts, this creates something remarkable. Students approach new information with genuine curiosity rather than performance anxiety. When you're not worried about appearing smart, your brain can focus entirely on understanding. The neuroscience here is striking. When your ego feels threatened, when you're afraid of being wrong or looking foolish, your brain activates the same stress responses it uses for physical danger. This literally shuts down the prefrontal cortex, the region responsible for complex learning and memory formation. I watched Finnish students in study groups where questions were celebrated, not stigmatized. There's even a cultural saying, "Se joka ei kysy, ei opi." Those who don't ask, don't learn. Mistakes become learning opportunities rather than sources of shame. This creates psychological safety where minds can collaborate rather than compete. Students report entering flow states more easily because they're not monitoring how others perceive their intelligence. One Swedish graduate student explained it perfectly. When you stop trying to look smart, you can actually become smart. The science of sisu. Finland has given us the concept of sisu, often translated as grit or perseverance, but it represents something more sophisticated. Nordic students don't rely on willpower to maintain learning habits. Instead, they build what cognitive scientists call implementation intentions, predetermined responses that bypass decision fatigue. Instead of constantly deciding whether to study, how long to focus, or what to tackle next, they create systems that run automatically. This preserves mental energy for actual learning rather than meta-decisions about learning. A typical Finnish learning pathway might flow like this. Brief review of previous concepts, focused engagement with new material, connection building between old and new information, practical application and preparation for the next session. Each step flows naturally into the next without requiring conscious decisions. This systematic approach develops what Finns call oppimisvarmuus, learning confidence. When you have reliable methods for engaging with any material, you stop fearing difficult subjects and start approaching them with calm competence. Sisu isn't about forcing yourself through pain. It's about building systems that make progress feel inevitable rather than heroic. The comfort connection Danish culture has perfected, something called hygge, creating conditions of genuine contentment and presence. When applied to learning, this transforms how your brain processes information. Your emotional state directly impacts cognitive function. Stress, anxiety, and discomfort activate neural circuits that prioritize survival over growth. But when you feel safe and comfortable, your brain naturally shifts into modes that optimize learning and memory consolidation. Danish. Students create learning environments that activate what neuroscientists call the rest and digest response, the parasympathetic state where memory formation and creative thinking flourish. This might mean studying in spaces with natural light, comfortable temperatures, and minimal harsh stimuli. But hygge goes deeper than physical comfort. It includes mental tranquility, approaching learning without rushing, allowing ideas to develop gradually rather than forcing rapid consumption of information. Danish students practice dyblæring, or deep learning through contemplative engagement. They might spend 20 minutes with a single concept, exploring it from multiple angles, connecting it to personal experience, and letting understanding emerge naturally. This creates what researchers call elaborative processing. Your brain builds rich networks of associations around new information, making it both more memorable and more useful. Working with your design. These Nordic approaches reveal something profound about human learning. We're not designed to absorb information through force. We're designed to learn through engagement, connection, and natural cognitive rhythms. The revolution isn't in working harder, it's in understanding how your mind actually functions and creating conditions that optimize its natural capabilities. Nordic. Students don't remember everything because they're smarter or more disciplined. They remember everything because they've learned to work with their brain's incredible design rather than against it. This shift in approach transforms not just what you learn, but how you experience the process of learning itself. When you align your study methods with your cognitive architecture, learning becomes something your brain wants to do rather than something you force it to endure. The wisdom isn't particularly Nordic. It's deeply human. These cultures have simply preserved and refined approaches that honor how minds naturally work. The invitation is to rediscover these principles in your own learning journey, creating systems that feel sustainable and effective rather than exhausting and forced. Your brain is already perfectly designed for learning. The question is whether you'll work with that design or against it.